Share. Copy. Close. Discord. And to Canvas. Publish. Hey everybody. How you doing? Notifications are out. Hopefully we have some people coming in. How you all doing? How is my stream? 7 viewers, okay. Oh, 36 viewers. Cool. Can we get email for feedback that isn't on the live stream? No, we will never do any feedback for any reason that's not live. Feedback will benefit all or no one. So I will dedicate as much time as I can to giving feedback in this live stream and the next live stream, but that's where it's all going to be. There's not assessment 2 in Canvas. There is. I'll show you. It's probably not where you're looking, and there's a reason for that. So in Canvas, go to modules, go to assessments. Assessment 2 brief is right there. It's not in assignments. It is in assessments. It's not in assignments yet. It is, and I'm going to go through it today. There's a reason why this is not public yet. There's a very good reason why, but it's been here for the last week and a half, and it's also been in Discord. But yes, I understand the logic of checking the assignments tab for the assessment, but there's a good reason why it's not there. And you will see in about 20 minutes. I'm sick. Oh, so am I, Gabriel. I've had COVID this week. So, hey everybody, by the way, if you haven't seen me this week, Dylan got COVID. I come down with it sort of Saturday, Sunday. I'm okay now. I hope you didn't get COVID as well, or I hope if you did, it wasn't a terribly horrible strain of it. Do I want assumptions in dot points or sentence form? Um, Probably sentence form, but they could still be dot points. You want to be careful here that the person reading them understands what you're saying. So although you probably understand them in like fragments of dot points, maybe it's better for them to be a little bit more fleshed out than that, because the person from a different project probably is going to struggle a little bit to understand them. I've got some examples where we might be able to go through some of that. No echo. Oh, okay. Echo is 2 streams open. Cool. If I do have bad audio, please always ask the question, because there's a good chance it's because I set something up wrong. Because, you know, that's to be expected. Fire alarm went off earlier in East Resident Tower. Still don't know why. Who got kicked out of their class this week because the fire alarm went off in... Well, the fire alarm didn't go off in ES, but the building got evacuated because of smoke. I heard that happened. I will never abandon you. I will die on this hill. This will now be the third live stream I've done in 3 years whilst having COVID. It's happened to me 3 years in a row now, not always during ENGG1500. Yeah, mate, if you think COVID's going to kill me, no. No, I didn't want to get you guys sick, though, so that's why I stayed away. And I particularly didn't want to get my tutors sick. I feel I could have battled through, but if I got a tutor sick, that can cause really bad things to break in this course. So I've been working from home for the last couple of days. I'm pretty sure I'll be in tomorrow. I'm fine. I'm pretty much asymptomatic apart from exhaustion, but to be honest, I don't think I can blame the COVID for the exhaustion. Think I can blame the 80-hour weeks for the past 2 months for the exhaustion. Do weekly progress reports apply to the report assessment as well? No. So the weekly progress reports, which is what we're going to talk about today for a couple of minutes, it will apply to your project specifically. It'll make a lot more sense when you see it. Give me sort of like 20 minutes. That's this A4 release. So we're going to talk about your competency first. Then we're going to talk about these weekly progress reports. Then we'll do the assessment help. So that's about to make a whole heap of sense to you. Should we submit for feedback if we didn't? Sure. You can submit now. If you want to flick me an email, you can. I've got a few things I'm already planning on looking through, so I don't know if I'll have time to look through more than what I already have, but there's no harm in you flicking it to me as an email now. If I've got time at the end of this live stream, sure, I'll look at opening it up for you. I'm prepared for the realism I've done everything wrong and have to fix it all. That's why we get feedback a week and a half out from a due date. Your class got evacuated? Yeah, that stinks. I mean, literally, I hear that the building stank of burning plastic. Big picture overview of the problem. What is the problem? Look at your project brief. For the weighted performance criteria, do you want us to make a table within the document? Yeah, I would say you probably want to... It depends. You could do this as a table. You could do this as like dot points and sentences. It would depend. So normally when you do performance criteria, you do it as a table because you've both got your weighted performance criteria and you've got your solutions that you're ranking against them, and you use it like a matrix. But you don't need to do your solution bit now. So you could do it as a table, you could do it as sort of dot points, you could do it as sentences. I don't necessarily think any of those are wrong, provided you've got some nice, you've thought about it, you've got some good logic, and it sort of all makes sense. Seems like all the fire alarms are going off. Yeah, a lot of people probably will get sick around about now. It happens. I mean, I've been face to face with 600 students every week for the first 3 to 4 weeks of semester. The fact that it took me 4 weeks to get sick is more the surprise, right? So this happens a lot of the time early in semester. It also happens to a lot of people around week like 11, 12, 13 of semester, which is more like just the exhaustion kicks in and the body sort of gives up, and then some little virus or bacteria makes its way in and gets us. Oh, I agree with your statement, Thomas Goodman. I don't have Red Bull today, unfortunately. Oh, I do have a Red Bull today. We'll see how much I struggle through this stream. Project scope. Which project? Your ENGG1500 project. The thing you've been working towards for the past 4 weeks. Cornelius bullied the software kids. Oh, mate, no, he didn't. You wait. You wait until me and Liam and Ross get hold of you on test day. The behind the scenes joke here is that Clyde is a software engineer, and one of the big difficulties with software engineering as a whole is that they can make something that works. The program functions, but when you give it to another human being, human users are idiots. and they break stuff and they do dumb things. So a huge complexity in the software project is that the software students always assume that their users are not idiots, and then we come in and deliberately be antagonistic, I guess you could say, to make sure that their solution is robust against a particularly difficult user. And I think Clyde got to experience some of that today. I printed out 6 A4 progress report, I'm guessing papers. The printers were so bad it kept restarting for some reason. Oh well, now you're gonna need 6 of them. So for the robot project, is the client Cordell or a competitor of Cordell? Yeah, either or. It doesn't super matter. Yeah, you can phrase that however you'd like, Mia. There is some ambiguity there. We phrase that slightly differently in different years. It doesn't super matter. You just need to define that the client is a company that does these types of things. And they've issued you a particular task, which is to do the scaled down version. Because that's not something that all projects are doing, so that won't make sense necessarily to another reader. So, yeah, just structure it out like that. Oh, it's 6 past. So, we can get started. So I'm going to smash through a bit of admin. We're going to talk about your competencies a little bit, which we've already had a tiny little chat about, and we'll talk about some more and why they're relevant and how they fit into your projects. And then I'll release assessment 4, and then I'll talk about assessment 2. I understand that this ordering sounds very strange. Also, where the hell is assessment 3? Don't worry, there is method to my madness. Bear with me for a little bit. This does make sense. It will make sense soon. So, the only bit of admin that I think I need to talk to you all about is hex census state. So, in case you don't know any of this, and I know some of you already do, but this is definitely worth stating. The way that it works at university is you enroll in all of your courses, and you come along and you start, and we put you in Canvas, and we do our things. But the government doesn't come around and count who is enrolled until a particular date. And that date is normally, but not always, Friday of week 4 of semester. And then the government comes around and says, all right, who's everybody enrolled in all of your courses? You, and you. Great. Charge them their money now. So you can freely enroll and drop a course. Well, you can't always freely enroll in a course, but you can freely drop a course before week 4, and you're not there when the government comes around and knocks and says, hey, who's enrolled in this course? Who gets charged? So if you're like, nah, this first semester doing 4 subjects is not for me, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit and just take 3 subjects or whatever. If you drop before hex census date, you will not pay for the course. If you drop after hex census date, you'll pay the full fee. So, don't let the uni take your money for no reason. If you're thinking about dropping a course, you've got like 1 day to figure this out and make a decision. And make sure you withdraw before census date, alright? So they don't steal your money. Fuck off. Other than that, is there any other admin stuff you guys wanted me to cover? Just trying to check the chat at the moment. That seems to be assessment stuff. We'll get to that. Guys, you have a random chatter channel. Put this shit in random chatter on Discord. Don't put it in here. I'm trying to read chat. Where can we find the milestone sheet? I'll show you that in a second. Yeah, it looks like we're doing okay. So, let's get into talking about your competency. You've all done your competencies this week. How were they? The expectation from me is that the response here is that they were learning experiences. They're not always particularly smooth, and they're not meant to be. They're meant to help you be a little bit of a line in the sand so that you can kind of go, okay, Am I doing as well as I thought I was doing? Am I in front of everybody else? Hey, that's good. Am I a little bit behind where I thought I was up to? And that's where most people actually are in week 4. And that's very intentional. It's like, okay, cool. I'm getting on top of this stuff, but I've got some more to do. That's the point. It's meant to be a learning experience. So some of the things you may have already learned is not everything that you need to know is necessarily in a project brief. So, or a documented brief or task description or something like that. So, how many of you worked through your competency, tried to follow the instructions, and realized that they were somewhat insufficient or dumb in some ways? I know anybody who's doing mech and aero would have experienced that some of the steps in that competency are a particularly dumb way to make the thing. Anyone doing the civil competency would now know that not everything was included in the brief that you needed to do. This was very, very deliberate. Kind of insufficient. And this is the point. You will never, ever, outside of a high schooling system, be given a complete and utter brief that tells you what to do. Because if I could write a brief that told somebody exactly what step to follow the entire way through, I would never pay an engineer to follow it out. Because what the hell would I pay an engineer for there? I can go and give that to somebody on minimum wage if the brief is completely and utterly robust, right? What you pay an engineer for is, here is my idea, here is the brief as it stands. It's got a couple of hard points in it, but it's on you to be able to go, hold on, we should reorganize this. Or, okay, I can design within that. Or, hey, we've all missed this. How many of you thought, who were doing the robot project, that, so the robot project, for some context here, these students are making a small semi-autonomous vehicle, and they had a little sonar sensor that's a pair of eyes, and their job was to drive around inside of a box and not hit the walls. And so many of them program it that if they approach a wall, to stop and turn. And that's really, really good logic. What they don't necessarily consider is if they approach a wall at an angle, their sensor doesn't see it until they collide with the wall. They followed every part of the brief and still smash into a wall. We want you to have this. We want you to be able to step out of that kind of assumption that the high school brief tells you everything, and the big brain engineering of, okay, what do we actually need to do here? Let's do some interpretation. I imagine many of you also found out that time management was somewhat of a big deal. Project management, particularly those of you who were on the tools, probably felt it was hard to have all 4 or however many team members you have working at maximum efficiency at all times. That's a real thing. It's very difficult to keep all of your team members working at maximum efficiency at all times. So a lot of the time it's worth, sorry, a lot of the time it's worth having things like pre-meetings and planning meetings so that when you get into a working environment, like your workshops, your tutorials, you can be as efficient as humanly possible. But that little bit of pre-time can make a big difference. Robots in your class were beefing. Oh, did you guys do battle bots? Did you put all of them in at the same time? Yeah, that's a thing. So the students making semi-autonomous vehicles, the robots, all assume that they'll be the only bot tested at one time. That's just not the case. We put all 6 of the bots in at the same time, and they all crash into each other. I forgot about battle bots. Battle bots is always fun. Yeah, particularly those of you who are working with, say, hardware like the robots or the medical devices will find that, well, one of you has the hardware and not all 4 people can work on it at one time. That's a big one from a time management. Those working on the tools will have experienced this as well. The softwares using Thunkable will experience this as well. It's a terrible tool for collaboration. Cool. How are you going to deal with that constraint of the project? Cool. Okay. And then that's kind of the point. So what I want you to take away from this is, holy crap, a heap of random shit went wrong. Fine. What are you going to do different in your major project? That's what we want you to take away from the competencies. We've specifically crafted all of these competencies such that when in previous years we've seen people screw stuff up in weeks 10, 11, 12. And we've told them, be careful with your time management. Make sure you've read the brief. Make sure you're aware that maybe the brief doesn't cover everything. And they just make these exact mistakes in well, they used to make these exact mistakes in weeks 10, 11, 12. So we carefully crafted these competencies such that all of those mistakes, hopefully, you make in week 3 or 4, and then you don't make them moving forward. And that's the really important thing I want you to take away from this, all right? It's not about whether you made mistakes in your competency or not. I couldn't give a shit how your competency went. I care that you don't screw up in weeks 10, 11, and then 12 when demo day comes around. So Clyde had a rough client interaction in his software competency project. And one of the learnings that we wanted was if he has a rough interaction in week 12 as well, to A, be better prepared for that, and so hopefully it goes smoother, but B, know how to answer questions in a high pressure environment. So what are you taking forward with you? Cool. I think we've covered all of that. This is, however, somewhat worth addressing. So I could just tell you all of this, right? I could make a video for you, which is, hey, here's practical learnings that you should be aware of before you start a practical project. And I could unleash that video on you in week 4. And in fact, I used to. So you may or may not have noticed that the week 4 lecture is actually fairly short. It's only about an hour of content. In years gone by, there was a second hour to that, and it was Dylan basically telling you all these things that were in the competency. You know how much of a difference that made for students? Fuck all. They learned nothing. Nothing at all from Dylan sitting here for an hour and explaining to you, these are the mistakes students make, don't make them. It does nothing to help you whatsoever. The only way you learn this is through experiencing it. And there's actually a whole bunch of pedagogy as to why. You haven't worked with me enough to trust me inherently yet. This is a thing that gets built over time, and so you don't trust me when I say, read your briefs properly, blah, blah, blah. It's not until you've experienced it that we build that type of trust up and stuff like that. So me telling you is a complete waste of my time and your time. You making these mistakes yourself is of benefit to you. Cool. All right, and now tying this back to your assignment, these are the types of things you talk about in your assessment too, all right? So you've got 2 pages to talk about your competency. It's probably worth a brief overview of what you were asked to do. It's absolutely worth having some figures in there so that people can see what you're talking about, the things that you learned from the task, and then really importantly, how you see that applying to the big picture project. And I know you're still developing your understanding of the big picture project, but it's not about specifically, I didn't have the right size bolts. It's about, I didn't have the right size bolts. And thus, things like redundancy and procurement and more detailed designs are something that we're going to need to have as we move forward into our actual project. It's that bit that's of most importance, okay? Cool. Good. All right, I'm going to give, I think this is the last, okay, I'll do this and then I'll read the chat. You guys had the opportunity to print for your competency, and very few people did, and that's fine. I deliberately didn't push it because I know you had a lot going on. This whole concept of fail fast, fail cheaply, which was the idea of your competencies, right? We gave you the opportunity to fail really early in a very safe environment so that you don't make these mistakes in the future. How do you continue this logic moving forward? 3D printing can be a really good option. Hey, I've got these 2 designs and I'm not sure which one is better. Print both of them, poke them, test them, see how they fit, see how they feel. It can be a good way to break down some of those design barriers. So you're welcome to do the 3D printing for those purposes over the next couple of weeks. It is probably worth, if you've not 3D printed before, getting a little bit of experience in this over weeks 5, 6, and 7 when you're in the design phase. And then you will have that as a skill behind you. And if you need to print stuff on shorter time frames for your project, you will be able to. So that's the thing. To address a question that I know I'm going to get 100 times, if you own your own 3D printer, how do you cost the parts? You cost it the same way. So you're allowed to use our farm, you're allowed to use your own printer, but all printed products must be costed as though they are going into production. It's not the cost of the first one that matters, it's the cost of the first 1,000, and you're not doing the first 1,000 on your home printer. So use the equations that I give you in the videos, whether you're printing at home or you're printing on our farm. There we go. All right. I'm going to skim chat because I think, yeah, we're about to move on. So if you have any questions about the competency, you'd like anything clarified, you don't realize why we screwed you around so much, I'm more than happy to address them now. Otherwise, we'll move into the assessments. I spent a millennia filing wood because of my poor sawing skills. Lesson learned, right? And I mean, you probably didn't have poor sawing skills as much as you deliberately erred really high on the side of caution, and you went, I don't want to cut too much away, so I'll cut way not enough, and then you have to file for forever. That's a little bit of how much risk are you willing to take versus how much work are you willing to put in. I've sent a draft. Should we attach it as a document or a link? Never ever send me a link. Um, as weird as this is going to sound, the staff and the student client. So yes, we both are Microsoft Office. You guys are using Microsoft Office. I'm using Microsoft Office. Both are purchased from the university, but they are essentially two completely separate companies. Everything you have through an @UON versus everything I have from an @Newcastle email address makes them two completely separate companies. It's really difficult for me to open links that students send me. Never send me links. Always send me things. So I'll address this to you. This needs to be addressed to everybody. We are aware that Thunkable sucks. Nobody has ever denied that fact. It's a constraint of the project. Get over it. I don't want to hear it. I know this is not to you. This is to everybody. We know. We picked it deliberately to be a pain in the ass programming language to make it a deliberate constraint of the project. This is going to happen to you all the time. Like, for example, I'm not allowed to put any Python programming on any unicomputer for any reason. It's really dumb, but it's a reality of the world. That's a fun learning experience for you. Yeah, it sucks. I know. Is your robot allowed to fly? Sure. But I will tell you now, there is not a single student in the last 8 years of running this project who has made significant modifications to the chassis of the robot and has ever passed. So is it allowed to fly? Yes. Should you make it fly? Absolutely not. We'll do assignment 2 in a second. Yeah, I understand the 3D printing doesn't really apply to the softwares. 3D printers are in a space that you guys don't have access to, and you don't need to. You submit the form, we'll print them, and then we'll deliver the parts for you. No, not Makerspace. Never ever use the Makerspace printers for any ENGG1500 project for any reason. We have given you access to a print farm. No ENGG1500 project is ever allowed in Makerspace. Cool, cool. Yeah, you'll have time for your mech competency tomorrow. How do we send a draft? You can email it to me. I've already got a bunch, but... So the assessment, this is that's an assessment thing. I'll cover this and then we'll move on. So the assessment will cover modules 1 to 4. No, it will cover modules 1 to 3 and the competency. So I'm pretty sure it's fairly explicit that it covers the first 3 weeks of content and the competency whenever you finish the competency. And it should have dates and everything involved in it. With the robot, is the model a scaled down version? Yep. I asked to find out safety features. Yeah, so your model, your thing in the robot project and a few of the other projects is a scaled down version of the big picture. We are looking to assess your ability to solve the big picture problem in a cheaper way because we're currently funding 36 robot teams right now. I think there's 36 robot teams. So we want to see that you can solve the problem at the little scale, which gives us enough faith in your team that you would be able to solve it at the bigger scale. Okay, this is a subtle point and it is a good question. It's worthy of an explanation. I'm going to move on and we can come back to these ones at the end because I'm going to issue your new assessment task. So assessment 4 is starting next week. What is going to start happening in your tutorials from this point onwards is we're going to stop issuing labs every week or modules or lecture slides or whatever we have been doing. That's going to stop, or it's going to taper off significantly over the next week. You will basically come in and we will say, work on your projects. We've got a week 5 exercise to do as a design thinking task, but other than that, for most of you, it's going to be go work on your projects. There's some projects who still have a module 4 or 5 to do, but most will be you're on your own. Figure it out from here. So what we're going to do is give you this assessment, which will help you take the next sort of 7 or 8 weeks of chaos and break it up into a series of small measurable achievements for you to work on. It is a way of assisting you with your project management. Also, it is a way of getting you every week to do a bit of work towards your project and paying you for it. You've got a project in week 12 that is worth 30%, right? The way you should think about it is you have a project in week 12 worth 40%, and you can bank 10 of those percent before you even walk in the door. And the way you bank them is you work on your project consistently every week. You prove to your client consistently every week that you have done the right thing, and you get paid in marks for that. So that's what this is all about. You will set a task that you're going to do for yourself every week, and you'll set your first one in week 5, and then you will deliver on that task the following week, week 6. So the first accessible content officially happens. You hand it in week 6, but you have to set it in your week 5 class, which will be next week. So that's why you're getting this assessment now. And then you'll do that every week all the way up until week 11. So let's have I already have this open. What am I doing? Assessment 4. All right, how does that look? Am I blocking anything? Nope, that looks fine. So every week you're going to come in and you're going to sort of follow this process. You will sit with your team and you will look at the state of your project. You will come up with a series of tasks, 1 per team member at least. You can have more than this, but at a minimum, you'll have 1 per team member. For most of you, this will be 4, but there's teams of 3, teams of 5, whatever. So 1 per team member, and you will write them down on this sheet that you're about to see. You will then get that approved by your client, by your tutorial leader. By the way, your tutorial leaders are going to start changing the way in which they talk to you, particularly through the milestones. They're going to start interacting with you like a business client would interact with a engineering firm. So they're going to say, it is on you. Go and fill. We assume you have filled the sheet out. This is an assessment task. If you don't fill the sheet out, expect to get 0. But they will be. We will assume you are prepared. We will assume you have had a team meeting. We'll assume you have your shit together, basically. Come and present to us what you would like us to do. We will approve that. This is how the transaction will work. So you'll set those every week. And then over the course of the week, you will complete them. And then you will come in and demonstrate that you have completed them by presenting measurable evidence. So this is not, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but it's not about saying, I'm going to go and work on this thing for a while, because that's not measurable. It's about saying, I'm going to hand you this thing next week, and you're going to be able to pick it up and say, yes, I agree, this thing has been handed to me. This is really important, this measurable deliverable. Partly because the client wants to see that, but also partly because your team wants to see that. Your team doesn't want somebody who's just working on stuff in the background. They need to know that you're meeting your goals. So, cool. All right, so this basically goes through the details of how this works. your job whilst you're in these, and we do these, by the way, this is a very real thing that happens in industry all the time. As I was running my startup company, we had these every single week with every single one of our clients and our investors. So this is a very common thing. And one of the things that you're trying to do is give faith to your client that you are on track. And it's not worth pulling all funding and all future funding from a particular team because they're never going to get there by test day. And the sunk cost fallacy is not one we want to keep doing. So cut your losses now. That's where you don't want to be. So it gives faith to your potential client that you're on track, but it goes both ways. You can then come to your client and say, look, I think we have a really good design, but we have met these particular roadblocks. Can you give us assistance in some way? And that might be advice and it might be help, but it might be resources. It might be materials you need. It might be budget that you need. It could be a whole lot of things. It might be a discussion about the constraints of the project and whether they're valid or not in your particular solution. So it goes both ways. Cool. And then keep you on track. You will have an extremely limited amount of time to do this. We do not want the entirety of the tutorials taken up by these client meetings. We want a small amount of the tutorial at the start and then the end taken up with client meetings, and then a heap of time in the middle for you to actually work on your fucking projects. So these will be extremely time sensitive. You'll come in, you will present. Per team member will have less than 1 minute maximum, to present what they've done in the last week. So it's, I told you I was going to make a bottle, boom, here's the bottle. Done. That's it. We want them to be that blatantly obvious that you have achieved your goals. You can do things like put them together in a small presentation and stuff like that, but when your client gets to you, they will start a 4-minute timer and they will stand up and walk away. So if you have to open your laptop and turn it on, you can expect to get 0 by the time your client has gone, well, your 4 minutes are up, I'm moving on to the next team. So you absolutely should sit and plan how you want this interaction to go and make sure that it can be fast and efficient so that we're not wasting tutorial time on something we don't have to waste tutorial time on. That gives you maximum time to then get help from your client. And at the end, each time you'll have to write your new milestones for next week and get them marked off. The rest of this is essentially discussion of that we've sort of already gone through. The only thing that I will point out is you are expected to behave as a professional in this environment. So there's nothing wrong with saying something went wrong. You know, we've had a failure. We need help here. That's completely fine. Lying about your current progress is very unprofessional, and interacting in an unprofessional way here. And I'm not saying you should have a suit and tie on. I'm just saying you should not waste this person's time, basically. Cool. Your client may occasionally set you milestones. I know in the D-Cell project, Simon likes to set a milestone that all teams must lock their budget by like week 10 or something, and he wants to see their budget in week 10, and he issues that milestone every year. So that might happen every now and then. But you guys can also set more than just these 4. There's nothing wrong with that. You can set all of these and then be like, oh, and also we're going to cover this, and this, but it's a minimum of 1 per team member. All right, and then this is the form that you fill out to help you. So, task name, you fill this out. Whatever you want to call the particular task, you call it that. Whoever you have assigned as your primary person, this is 1 person goes in here. This is the person assigned. Somebody else can assist. That's totally fine. Be like, Dylan's going to do this and get help from Alex. Totally fine. But 1 person is assigned the task. They are responsible. How long you expect it to take, and when you expect it to be done by. This is rarely going to be the following class. Most often it's going to be like, hey, I need you to write this piece of code so I can write that piece of code. I need you to finish your thing by Saturday so I can start my thing and have it finished by Wednesday so that we can give it to our other team member who then needs to upload it to the hardware and test it. So whenever your team decides, obviously the very latest date is the start of your following workshop, but use that more intelligently than that. Any resources required? Do you need hardware? Do you need software? Do you need team members to come and help you? All of these things can go in here. And are you dependent on anything? These two things are often quite related. Do you need Joe Blogs to finish their particular piece of work before you can pick it up? A description of what you're going to do, just briefly write down the things you're going to do. And all of this, to some extent, I don't really give a shit about because that's not what I'm marking. What I'm marking is this. What are you going to put in my hand when I walk in to mark you the following week as the client? That's the really important thing, and that's what you need to agree on. That is what is being approved each week, okay? And when we come to evaluate you on your success, that is what we will be marking you on. So, as an example, one that's been filled out here, task name, do some background research. I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend 4 hours, and it's going to be done by Saturday because, I don't know, our team meeting, for example, maybe we've decided is going to be Saturday afternoon at the pub, and this is when we're going to do it. Apparently, I was doing this 2 years ago. I don't need a lot of resources, just computer and internet access, that's fine. But I might be dependent on one of my other team members to have done a particular job. So if this is the case, I need to make sure that whenever Alex is going to hand his thing in by, is reasonable. If Alex thinks he's going to hand his thing in on Sunday night, well, I'm kind of screwed there, right? Description of tasks, I'm going to look into some background information about blah, blah, blah. Again, whatever, it's flavor text at this stage. The thing that matters is this. What am I going to hand the client? And a summary of research findings is not measurable enough. It's not, oh, I did some research, I'll talk to you about them for a while. No, bullshit, you will. What are you going to hand in? A printed 2-page summary of the research findings. Cool. That's something that can be marked in 60 seconds. That's what you want. You also get this section down here, which is basically for you to make notes for yourself or for your team or for your client meeting. Hey, this took way longer than I expected, and I really need some help from the tutor. If you can go in with this sort of request, then the tutor is really likely to help you. If you go in without a plan, the tutor is less likely to help you. So that is essentially assessment 4. You're just going to do this every week, and you want to get this running as efficiently as humanly possible. So, cool. I'm going to have a look at the chat. Are there any questions? What happened to assessment 3? Assessment 3 is coming. Yes, I understand this is very strange that I am issuing assessment 4. Yeah, the first one's due in week 6. The last one, so the way that assessment numbering works is it's based on the final due date. So the first assessment 4 is due in week 6, but the last one is due in week 11. Assessment 3 will get released in week 6 and be due in week 8. So its due date is technically before assessment 4's. It's super annoying, I know. Week 6 we're about to talk about. That's a very valid point, Lara. Assessment 4... Yeah, so Clyde, that's perfect. Let me recap. Let's do this. This is definitely worth doing. Assessment 1 is the quiz. It was the freebie quiz due at the end of week 2. Correct. Assessment 2 is the first report due at the start of week 6, at the end of all the public holidays. Assessment 3 is peer review, which we're going to talk about in a second, which will be due 2 weeks after that, peer reviewing the first assessment. Correct. Assessment 4 is the milestones, which go from week 5, you start them, and you finish them in week 11. The final project delivery is technically assessment 5. So that final work, I think that's assessment 5. They are split. You should actually probably think about them as a combined, but they're technically split. Will they be presented in front of the class or in front of the tutor? Just in front of the tutor. So you'll come in and the tutor will pick a team at random and they'll start with that team and everybody else will just want to work on their projects and the tutor will just bounce around and go to each team. To what week do we summarize in assessment 2? I'll talk about that in a second. So are we not allowed to use content from week 4 because there's some really cool stuff there I've written about? No, you shouldn't. I wouldn't say you're not allowed to, but you don't have to. How does education fit in with this? Same as everybody else. So you will you will have your project to develop a resource to be deployed into a school. You will work on that project every week. You will demonstrate that project at the end. The Josh and I have worked pretty hard on making sure that the education project fits the roadmap perfectly well. Some of the wording Josh will use a little bit different so that it translates a little bit better. But it should all fit, and if something doesn't fit, that'll be Josh's call, and he'll let you know about that. So if you're particularly going, I don't understand how this specific bit of the education project doesn't fit, ask Josh. He'll bring it to me if it needs to come to me. I'll also be in your class next week, so we can chat then if you would like. I understand that some of this requires some extra translation there. Yep, we'll talk about week 6. Are there more assessments after 4? Yeah, it goes up to 7. So there's 4, and then 5 is the project, and then 6 is the final report, and then 7 is the final peer review. Part of our weekly task will likely include construction at some stage. Yes, 100%. But all of my team is living on campus and therefore don't have access to tools. Can groups organize ES126 outside of class? No. So you'll never have access to ES126 outside of class because we can't. The room is free so rarely and it gets used so much that we can't do that. So what I want somebody in this situation to do is when they do their design work, think really hard about the resources they have available and then what a good design is. So you should evaluate your designs. One of your design performance criteria should be, can this thing be built either without access to a workshop or with very limited access to a workshop? And then you should use that fact to help you select your best design. And your best design will be one that requires very little workshop access. And then on test day, you stand up and you sell it to me on that fact. You say, Dylan, by far the most expensive part of this entire project is running the workshop, which is 100% true. It's labor in the workshop is the most expensive part of the project. Our solution is the best because we use the least labor in the workshop. That's how you win with that. So look at the assessment 2 documentation, should help you. Is coming at 7:30 absolutely critical tomorrow? If you want the content, it is. Yes, you should be there for the content. We will start content delivery at 7:30. All right, let's talk about week 6 because there's been a lot of questions about this and they're very valid. So I say week 6 here. Friday of week 5, so Friday next week, is Good Friday. The Monday after that, so Monday of week 6, is also a public holiday. And you may not know this, but the university officially takes the Tuesday after Easter off as well, like it's a public holiday, which means Friday, Monday, Tuesday classes are all going to miss out either at the end of week 5 or the start of week 6. This creates an enormous equity problem for me because time in the workshop is super duper valuable, and it is just unbelievably unfair to have one class get an extra whole week in the workshop that a different class doesn't get. So here is my solution. I will run no tutorials in ENGG1500 between the end of the live stream in week 5, so that will be Thursday night in week 5. Then it's the public holiday on that Friday, the public holiday on the Monday, the public holiday on the Tuesday. If you have a class on the Wednesday or Thursday of week 6, you do not go to it. We will not run face-to-face classes in that time. Okay? And then I'll pick back up with the week 6 live stream. And then the Friday class comes in week 6 like normal because they missed week 5 the week before. You will still be required to do your milestones though. So you're going to write milestones in week 5. and you're going to deliver them in week 6. The way you're going to deliver them is online. So you're going to put them on Discord or maybe via email. Your tutor will have discretion there. So if Simon says he wants them emailed to him, then you email them. If Cornelius says he wants to see them on Discord, I'm just picking random names of tutors out of my butt here, then he'll want them on Discord. Most of them, I think, will want them on Discord, but whatever your tutor says they want you to do, they're going to want to see your deliverable. So you still have to do work in week 6 regardless, but you do not have to show up for your class. So when you set your first set of milestones, make sure they're something that you will be able to demonstrate online. So you still may make a bottle. I don't know who's making a bottle, but let's assume you wanted to make a bottle. Then your deliverable would be a photograph of the bottle posted to Discord. So the timing really sucks. I know it sucks, but this is the absolute best I can do in this situation. So hopefully that helps. If we choose to 3D print something, do we have to use the print farm? You don't have to, but you're more than welcome to. Any questions on the week 6 stuff? I know lots of people have had questions about this. While on the topic of public holidays, what's happening? Anzac Day falls on a Thursday. Yeah, I thought Anzac Day fell in the mid-semester break this year. Does it not? I thought it was in the break. Otherwise, we'll do the same thing. We'll do something similar. We'll run an online set of classes for you in that particular week. This is the other thing. There's a mid-semester break between week 7 and 8, I think, and there's 1 or 2 weeks off there. Normally, by the way, they put Easter in the middle of the mid-semester break. They normally move the mid-semester break to whenever Easter is, but they haven't done that this year. Week 6 Friday workshops are running, correct, because week 5 Friday workshops are not, because it's Good Friday. Yeah, it's in the break, sick. So you won't lose that class on Anzac Day, which means if I wipe these Wednesday, Thursday of week 6, everybody across the board has 1 week where they have an online set of deliverables, and every other week is face-to-face. That's the grand plan. So A2 is to include 1 to 3 weeks plus the practical competency. Yeah. Is anyone able to give me feedback? I am. If you want feedback on assessment 2, you do as many others have already done, and you email it to me, and I go through it in a stream, which I'm going to do in a second. So if you have any more questions about week 6 or whatever, let me know, but I want to show you some more stuff about assessment 2 here. So we're going to move into this a little bit now. I'm going to show you the submission portal, which, why is that not open? That's right. Just give me a second to open Canvas. All right. So you can't see this yet. You're going to see this in like 10 minutes. Once I finish this spiel, I'm going to show you this. To reiterate, I've answered this question already, but it was a valid question. If you want your brief, it's there. It's been there the whole time. Also, it's obviously in Discord, which is where like 95% of you got it from. This is about to appear. This is going to be your submission portal for assessment 2. And the portal through which you also complete peer review assessment 3. Now, I have to remember the right way to do this. I think I have to click edit, and then I have to click full screen. I'm not going to be able to see chat for a little while, so I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to move chat so I can see it. It's going to go off screen, but I'm going to put it on my other screen just in case. If assessment 2 is getting feedback in a stream, wouldn't you have a limited amount of sheets to give feedback on? What? Examples. So we're going to go through some examples of assessment 2 in a minute. Something I want to warn everybody about is trying to learn report writing by examples is a fucking terrible thing to do. And I tried it for many years, and it really, really, really hurt students. Sounds super weird, right? Because everybody thinks that an example is a good way to do it. It leads people into horribly bad writing practices. We are going to do some examples, but we're going to look at examples not as here's a perfect one. Here's one we're going to critique and get better at. So we're going to do that in like 10 minutes, okay? What I want to do is show you your Assessment 2 submission portal and how it will be used for Assessment 3 as well, because you're going to want to know this so that you can do a good job of writing up your Assessment 2. So you're going to come here and you're going to submit. Here are your submission instructions. It's very simple. This is just a link to the assessment outline and the title page. You'll submit here. You will submit exactly one file. So this will allow you to submit a file and then take it down and submit a new file, but you can't have more than one file sitting in the submission portal at any one time, which is good. It means you can hopefully never screw this up. It's due on April 2nd at 23:59. Do not test that at 23:59 and 1 second. This portal will close. You will get 0. Do not let it get anywhere near that time, because 600 students all trying to upload at the same time may mean it takes 20 or 30 minutes for your Word doc to upload. This does happen. And if as a result of that yours is late, you will get 0. So don't even get close to 11 o'clock on the 2nd. You must upload a docx. You've been told that already. They will be anonymous. You will then get automatic feedback. So this particular portal has an AI built into it, which is going to provide you feedback on these things. So I've curated this. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can ask it to give you feedback on, or what type of feedback, or all that kind of stuff. But it is automatically before the due date. So as soon as you upload something to it, you should be able to get this information. It'll look for abbreviations. It'll look for your writing style, look for grammar, look for personal pronouns. It will look for all of this automatically. So the question of, oh, can I use blah, blah, blah AI tool to help me? Use this one. This is the one that is curated specifically for you. Use it. Okay, so can you use AI to help you? Yes, so much so I am supplying one for you. Use this. So you'll get this AI feedback, and part of the point here is upload a draft, get the AI feedback, go and make the modifications to your draft, take it down, put it back up, right? Do that iteratively to improve. So that's the automatic feedback. After it is due, so when the due date passes, you can get the automatic feedback before the due date. Once the due date is passed, then it will become a peer review assignment. And you will all get issued 5 of your peers to go through and mark. So you'll get given 5 reports to look at. You'll look at them all, and you will, a mark is the wrong word. You will review them, because you're never actually going to give them a mark at any stage. And you're going to review them on 4 different categories. 2 of them are these 2 different marking rubrics. So here's one marking rubric. You may notice that everything in this first marking rubric is stuff you've seen before. It is copy and pasted from the assessment brief. The second rubric you will use to guide them and provide feedback on is this one. You may notice does it have all of this content? And then if I go into it, does this content exist? Is there a big picture overview? And I understand that it's a little bit hard to read what's in these particular things, but this says exists and contains the majority of appropriate information. Exists and contains lots of appropriate information. Exists and contains, I'm going to say some appropriate information. Does not exist, doesn't contain much appropriate information. And that's it. And you're just going to come through, you're going to read these reports, and you're going to be like, yes, they had the right section and it had the right stuff in it. Perfect. Or they had the right section and it mainly had the right stuff in it. Very good. And you're just going to evaluate them on that. Again, these are copy and pasted from the assignment brief. There are 2 more sections then. This one is a provide a comment. So I'm asking you to give me a short answer, 100 to 200 words, like a paragraph or 2, not War and Peace. I don't want to see a whole fucking page, just a bit of a paragraph or 2 of how well did they address the target audience of another first-year student from a different discipline, which will be easy for you because you will be another first-year engineering student from a different discipline, right? So it's this, you did a really great job of this. I understood everything. I understood the language. Well done. Versus, I really got lost in this particular section. I couldn't understand what these things meant. I think you needed to explain more about blah, blah, blah before you launched into whatever you were talking about here. So you'll need to do that. And then finally, this will be easier for you. I'm currently editing it, which is not the right way to do this. The very last thing that you will do is after you have read them all, you will go and you will fill out this form. In this form, you'll put in your own student number, and then you've been asked to rank the reports from best to worst. At no stage do you give them a mark. You simply go, I read 5 reports, and I've put them in order. This one's the best, this is the second best, third best, fourth best, or fifth best. If you get a report where somebody has just not even tried, they've made a non-attempt, it's like two pages long, or it's worth 0. And if you're umming and ahhing about whether it's worth 0 or not, put it in. But if you're like, this is absolutely worth 0, you don't need to even include it. You would just potentially submit 4 student numbers in this case. But in general, most of you will have 5, hopefully, pretty good reports, and you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll put all their student numbers in, and you'll hit submit. And that gets you through the peer review bit. And then after that is finished, you come in and you read all the reviews that all of your peers gave you, and you rank your reviewers. So if you get a reviewer who gave you really nice, helpful feedback, and it's not necessarily that they were like, yeah, you're good. They're like, you're kind of garbage at this. Here's exactly what you did wrong and how to do better. That's amazing. Give that reviewer 10 out of 10. If somebody goes, it was pretty good, give that reviewer like 3 out of 10. That doesn't help you in any way. So it's not about, was my reviewer nice to me? It's about, was my reviewer helpful? And then you rank them. So if they're all really helpful, and I imagine most of them will be pretty helpful, they'll all get 8, 9, 10 out of 10s for being kick-ass reviewers. You do all of that, and you will get your grades for assessment 3. Okay? So you get grades for doing all of the feedback. You get grades for how well you get ranked as a reviewer. You get grades for reviewing your reviewer, and you get grades for reading your own feedback. That is assessment 3. The reason I take you through this is I can now make it available, which is nice. Yeah, exist. I don't know why it's there. Why is it in induction quiz? All right, I'll move it so it's not in that particular section. I'll make a section for it at some stage. It doesn't matter. But there is that. Let me just grab chat back. In A3, when we're reviewing, can we use first person language? Yeah, 100% you can. Absolutely. You want to provide something in a human way that they can that person can understand. When is A3 due? So your review of the 5 reports is due exactly 2 weeks after it's released. So it's released on the 2nd of April. You've got 2 weeks to do the revisions. And then once all the revisions are in, you've got 1 week to rate your reviewer. It has appeared. Fantastic. Thank you. Cool. So if there's any more questions on that, let me know. We've talked about this. You get it for free. Oh, okay. So yeah, a couple other things I wanted to remember to point out. You can use the AI that I've supplied for you. You cannot at any stage ever use an AI to generate content. Okay? You must write your own content and then have an AI review it. If you are caught using an AI to generate content, you will receive 0 and be reported for academic fraud, because that's unacceptable. You write it and then you use it as a proofreading tool, all right? Not your primary way of creating content. Same thing kind of goes for the documents that we've already given you. Don't just basically copy paste the project brief in and change a couple of words. The best thing for you to do is to read through your project brief and review your first couple of weeks of content and any online resources that you found that have been really useful, and then close them all and write without looking at them. Once you've got your first draft out, that will all be your own words, and then you can come back and you can come back and you can refine it as needed. Put numbers in from the brief and whatever, but this is how you stay away from copying pasting. Cool, 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 cool. So you will be only marking reports from the same program. No, 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 no. Aero will review Aero, Mech will review Mech. No, not at all. So the target audience for your first report is somebody from a different discipline, right? So you will be marking almost exclusively people from other disciplines. I'm not sure yet whether I'll enforce that you'll only ever get people from other disciplines. I can enforce that if I want. I don't think I care that much. I think it would be nice for you to see at least one from your own discipline, but I think I'll just leave it completely random. That's inappropriate language, and that will not be tolerated. Smash some drafts out? Yeah, go for it. Is assessment to an individual report? Yes. Are we doing project with the same group as before? Yeah, you're already in your projects for the semester. Cool. Any other questions about that? We might address them at the end. I would like to get on to assessment 2. This is perfect. It was meant to be an hour of one and an hour of the other. So let's get into assessment 2 help. Talking about doing a whole bunch of drafts over the weekend, let's in some ways the briefs have to be the same though, right? I don't understand your question. Your target audience is somebody from another discipline. It doesn't matter what your brief, like it's your job to describe to your target audience what the particular brief is. The big picture constraints are the same. It's a practical project. It's due in week 12. There'll be deliverables. They're working in a team of 4 people. All of those types of things are obviously the same. But they're another ENGG1500 student. So they already know all of that. What they don't know is anything about your specific project. As an education student, I'm not sure what assessment 2 is asking of me, as I really haven't done much content during the tutorial. My understanding is that you guys have done a whole bunch of Arduino stuff, a whole bunch of introduction to coding, a bunch of introduction to electronics, all of that. The new student knows none of that, nothing at all. So this is a thing that comes up quite often, is that people will get to the end of week 3, and it is, actually, I should take a moment to address this better than I just did. Many of you will have this exact thought. We haven't done much in our projects yet. That's actually generally not true at all. If you can turn around and go, oh, I actually had no idea that this thing was called an Arduino, or that this thing was called this, or what this particular tool was for, or whatever. All of that is the stuff that we want you putting into this this first assessment, as well as talking about the big picture project overview and stuff like that. One of the things this is actually quite good for is being a reflective learning task. So I'm gonna have a bit of a go at this and address some of the questions that have come through the week, and then I'll have another go back at the chat. So if you're starting your assessment 2, remember, and I've given you this is directly taken from the lectures, follow this process. I've had a bunch of questions about some really specific sort of editing things or some very specific details, and I'm doing my best to answer those questions, and that's fine. I don't mind people asking them, but you should be at this stage right now. And it doesn't really matter if you have an exact number or you know an exact formatting rule or something like that. You should just be smashing out 10, 20 pages of content and then you come through and you start revising those and filling in the blanks and making them pretty and making them accurate. But for now, put words under all of the sections, okay? That's a really important thing for you to do. And then you can get into these loops over the next week or so. I've been asked this a couple of times. Do we need a table of contents and stuff like that? Absolutely not. On a 10-page report, I don't see any value at all in a table of contents. I can find something by flicking through a 10-page report much faster than I can find it by looking it up in a table of contents. Not appropriate. Same goes for list of figures, same goes for list of tables. You also don't need an acknowledgement section, but if you want to put an acknowledgement section in and you have a reason why you would like to, that's fine. You're allowed to, but you're not required to. Be aware it has to be completely anonymous though, so you can't acknowledge Joe Blogs. You have to acknowledge team member number 1 because you're not allowed to name anybody in this assessment because of the peer review. It must be fully anonymous. Yep, using the word referencing system is totally fine. Some people struggling to embed the title page, don't. I don't have the title page open. Just copy and paste the title page in. I'm not going to get it from there because I want that folder open. Where's Discord? Discord is where all of the things that are important to me always live. Assessment 2 questions. Give me a title page. Gimme. Title page. You don't have to embed this. You can just, obviously, download it first. Don't do this from within Word, but you can just do a Control-A, Control-C, Control-V into your document if you would like. There's absolutely nothing wrong with just copy and pasting it over, okay? For doing your references, you're more than welcome to use EndNote, Mendeley. Just use the inbuilt Word referencing manager. It's really easy to use. It's not the most amazing thing in the world, but I used it for my honors thesis and it was totally fine. I didn't use it for my 300-page PhD thesis, but I used it for my 150-page honors thesis and it's fine. So anyone that you want, I don't care. There is no restrictions on you manually typing in APA referenced stuff. That's you don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Use whatever referencing system you like. I haven't gotten this question this year, but I got it a lot last year. What tense do we use? This can be a particularly tricky question when you're writing about something that you haven't finished yet. When you write your final report, you will write it as though everything is done and dusted, even though some of it might not be done and dusted, but you will write it as though everything is done and dusted, and so past tense is really easy. For some of this, it can get a little tricky. Be consistent. Try and use a past or a present tense, but like you're going to have to talk sometimes about how the learnings from your competency might get applied in the project, and you might slip into some future tense there. And yeah, okay, I can see how that would happen. Don't stress too much about it. Just try wherever you can to be consistent. I have gotten this question. Are we writing about the competency or are we writing about the project? You're writing about the big picture project at all times, apart from a little bit in that 2 pages where you specifically talk about the competency. The whole rest of it is about the big picture project. I've gotten this question a few times. I get this question a bunch of times. What goes in the scope? What goes in the scope is go back to the week 3 lecture and watch it. We talk about scoping. So what goes in a scope are numbers. How big, how many, how much, how long, how fast, how much time, how much money, how much whatever. That goes in the scope. It's where your numbers go. And that's what often separates it from the big picture overview. So the big picture overview will be more wordy and it will talk about the problem. The scope will be more bounds and numbers to put definitions on these types of things. Can the scope and assumptions be in dot point form? The scope absolutely can be. The assumptions maybe. Be aware of who your target audience is. Somebody else doing your project can probably read dot point assumptions really easily. Somebody doing not your project may be able to, and that may be a really, really good way to do it. Just be a little bit careful that there's enough explanation in them so that they can understand them. Figures, all right, so figures are a thing that's come up a little bit. There was a good question in the chat about can you use hand-drawn figures? And the answer is yeah, you can. You should try and do a nice job of them if you're going to do them, but you can absolutely use hand-drawn figures. I don't think they're that appropriate in this project, in this report, but a lot of the time when you're talking about designs and things like that, your designs will be whiteboard designs or hand-drawn figures, and that's completely appropriate to put it in. A better way to make a lot of figures and diagrams and things is to go into PowerPoint and make them in PowerPoint. You can make quite sophisticated figures in PowerPoint, and if you make them with a particular template, I'm going to call it, like you set your line widths to be consistent and stuff like that, you can make really nice repeatable figures. So if you're going to make like 10 figures in a really big report, they all kind of look the same and they fit together and they give it a really professional feel if you do that. The tricks here is set your slide size. So when you're in PowerPoint, go to a custom slide size and set it to be the size you want the final figure to be. And then you don't ever rescale this. So you put the text in the right size, you draw everything the way you want it to be, and then you can just save a slide as a JPEG or a PNG or whatever and directly import it and then just drag that straight into your report. It's a really efficient way to do things. You can also take figures from the slides or the internet or something like that. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do, but if you do so, you must reference them, okay? You reference them in the text and in the caption. Make sure that appears. In terms of using teammates' photos, please don't do it. Please don't take your own fucking photos. So, it's a huge flag for plagiarism, is shared photos massively flag for plagiarism for me, because it's really easy for somebody to get somebody else's text and put it through a thing that changes the words up and makes it sound different. It's really hard if you've stolen a report from somebody else for you to mess with their figures. So the number one red flag for me is the same figures appearing in two reports. That is just red flag, plagiarism bells through the roof. So don't do it. Take your own photos. Even if that means you stand there and take a photo and then your teammate comes up right next to you and takes the same photo or an extremely similar one, that's fine, because that's not going to raise any red flags for plagiarism for me. But take your own photos wherever humanly possible. Also, make sure there are no faces in the photos that you put in. Remember, your report needs to be anonymous. If you've already taken photos and they've got people in the photos being heap sick, that's fine. Like, I love the fact that you guys are proud of your things and you want to be in the photos. That's fantastic. Just blur their faces out. That's the common practice in this case, is just blur their faces out. Again, if you need to do that, just dump that photo into PowerPoint and just put a circle on top of their face. That's totally fine. It's super simple. Cool. I'll get through this before I go to chat. It seems like chat's diverging a little bit right now, which is fine. But I'll try and get through this advice so everybody has it, and then I'll go back to chat. Some other things that I just wanted to clarify: there are no hard copies this year. There were last year. There has been every single year of ENGG1500 since its conception up until now has required a hard copy submission as well as a soft copy submission. This is not true this year. It is just the submission to that portal that I showed you before. This is different. Sorry if I've muddled my wording up from time to time. It's 8 years of inertia, and me occasionally saying, "Huh, you don't need them this year." I'm sorry if my wording hasn't been perfectly clear there. Your tutorial name and project, I will show you. I just want to make sure. Let's do that. So I've had this question a few times. How do I get my tutorial number? It's this number just here. So T01, everybody is T01. It's slash something something. So 05 or 06, it's that number there. And then if you're team 1, it's just T01/05 team 1. It's in Discord. If you want your project name, it's whatever project name is in here, okay? So DSAL, most of you are just your discipline, education, aero, mech, but every now and then robot is robot. and desal is desal. I think they're the only two that are different, but you get them from there. Referencing on tutorial content. So you are allowed to reference the project brief or the labs or modules or whatever you've been getting in your workshops. That's 100% totally fine, valid thing to do. Depending on the system that you're using, either APA or IEEE, you'll have to pick a type of work. It'll ask you, is it a book? Is it a journal publication? Is it a paper? Is it whatever? What do you pick? In IEEE, I think you can pick miscellaneous as an option, which is fine. And I think I was having this chat with somebody in the Discord a couple of days ago, and I think they found unpublished work in APA seemed to work just fine. So pick something for them. Neither of these systems have lecture slides as an option by default. So just pick something appropriate. If you don't know who your author is, your first author is your tutor, and your publisher is the University of Newcastle, and they were published this year. You'll work the rest of that out. Okay, and then we are good. So from here, I'm going to review some examples, but I will have a look. If you have any specific questions, I'll have a look at them. And then I've got, I think, 3 examples lined up to go through in the next sort of 45 minutes, where we'll get to actually see some of this stuff in practice. I know it's a lot of brain dump, but I wanted to cover as much of it as I could. Just give me a second, actually. Okay, and we're back. So the scope could, I'm not sure where I got up to. So if I've missed your question, feel free to re-ask it. I'm just going to start here. On the topic of money, we have received actual numerical values for our budget, $100. And if so, where would I find $100 for everybody unless you've heard differently, but $100 is your max budget. You can prototype outside of that. So if you want to just buy a bunch of random material and try some stuff, go for it. That doesn't come out of your product budget, but the thing that you make it for at the end of the day, $100. And that's what you'll be able to claim back from the uni. Assessment 4 is the weekly updates. Yeah, the milestones. Yep, 100%. So the scope could just be table listing measurements, prices, etc. It wouldn't be just that, but that absolutely could be something. Whether you'd use a table or dot points, not entirely sure. But yeah, it's scopes tend to not be particularly pleasant things to read as much as they just tend to be like a lookup table for information. Assessment 5 is final project. Correct. Is a lifetime required for the software task? Absolutely. What should we aim for? That's up to you to determine. That's a very good question. Put some thought into that, because that's one of the things you might want to sell me on or optimize your project around. Is it okay for it to have an extremely short lifespan? No, assessment 3 is the peer review. You haven't gotten assessment 3 yet. It's the peer review. Assessment 1 is the quiz. Assessment 2 is the first report. Assessment 3 is the peer review of that report. Assessment 4 is the milestones. Assessment 5 is the project demo. It's all in your Canvas. You can have a look at it. So this is modules, assessment due dates. It's all there. Just works you through them in order. Some of these are subject to change a little bit. I might, if I can, push some of these dates back. I don't actually think I can push these dates back any more than I already have, but yeah, they're all there. It's simple. Do the quiz, do the design report, do the peer review of that when it becomes available. Go to your classes every week. You don't have to do anything for this assessment other than keep going to your classes every week. It's actually really simple. I know it's a lot of information right now, but it's actually very simple. That is correct. Are we able to make up values for lifetime length? You are able to put your best estimate right now in. So this is another one of the things you will need to sometimes put in. This is our estimated life at this stage. If that's completely ridiculous, it tells us that you don't understand the problem and that's bad. But most of the time it's, yeah, with the information you have, cool. That's as good a guess as anybody has. And there will be some variation here, and that will actually be some of the reason we get variation in the final projects. Yeah, look, the COVID is making it harder. We will get there. It's not the headset, it's the room that's 40 degrees at the moment. What sort of things would the robot... I just lost it. Did a whole bunch just come in there? What sort of things would the robot group have in the scope? Same thing everybody else would have. How big, how many, how much? How big is it? Is it a full-scale car that you're making? Or is it something smaller than that? How many of them are you making in your project? And big picture, how many will you make? How much? What is your budget? How much? As in, how long do you have to do it? All of these things go in. These questions are generic. They apply to pretty much everybody. Yeah, 2 peer reviews and 2 reports. So there's a preliminary report and a final report. And then yes, you peer review both of them. You are correct. Glad we got there. Sorry if I said anything wrong, because I look, I'm not beyond having just said absolutely the wrong thing right now. Is there a video we can watch that shows how to do referencing properly? Don't know. What do you mean by referencing properly? And also, don't know. Did I make one? Did I not make one? Where is, oh, how about I go to Discord, because I know where it is if I go to Discord. I want writing help. No, there is not a video on how to reference properly. I might try and make you guys one, but I wouldn't stress too much about it at this stage. Glad you like Word 101. During the competency, one person took a bunch of photos. So, yeah, look, it's going to happen in the competency. One of the learning objectives is don't do that again. You'll have to probably share it in this report. This is where you might want an acknowledgement section. The author greatly appreciates and acknowledges team member number 1, because you're not allowed to name them, for the photos they took during the competency, which have been used in this report. And then from that stage, take your own photos from that point onwards. Yes, Hugo, you are correct. Start your assignments early and do them in chunks. We went through weighted performance criteria at the end of the last live stream. So I think that's explained in here as well. Okay, go to the last live stream and go, it's towards the end. It's kind of the last thing we did before some open question time was our weighted performance criteria. All right, what I might do is start going through a couple of these examples, because I think a bunch of the questions you have may be better answered this way. So what I've got here, and what we should do right now, is thank the couple people who submitted early today, who I've been able to already have a bit of a look at and decide which of these I want to put on stream. Now, before I put one of these on stream, having your work critiqued is never fun. Having your work critiqued by somebody who is specifically looking to point out as many errors as possible for a learning perspective, so that I can use this to be like, hey, don't do this. Hey, here's something we can learn here. Here's something we can learn here. That's particularly brutal. So thank you to those who have put their work up here, the sacrificial lambs. And everybody should take away from this that, I mean, these are the people who had their shit together enough to even send me something yesterday. I think all of these people sent it to me yesterday or early this morning, either way. So thank you to you. And although I'm going to be very critical right now for the learning objective, you guys have actually done quite well. You've got enough here for me to talk about. So let's start talking about some of these things. So I'm going to pull up some things. Where is this opening? There it is. Wrong monitor. Nope, maybe not. Here we go. All right. I might move chat, actually. Where's chat? There you are. Let's put you on the other screen. So, first things first, the title of this assessment is not correct. You've been given what your assessment must be titled. If you don't, and this is in a super duper early draft, so I imagine this person is like, yeah, man, I just haven't gotten to that yet. But make sure you title it correctly, because if you don't, it won't get sorted correctly and you may get 0. So make sure you give it the correct title. The brief tells you how to title your thing. Fill your title page out. This person may have actually done that and I may have deleted it. Fill the title page out. Table of contents, not required. 10-page report, don't need it. That being said, this person has made a fantastic start in that they've put a legitimate table of contents in. They haven't just written table of contents. This is a real one. And if, as they worked through their report, they came in and they made these things headings, I don't know how many we've actually got. We've only got the one to work with. But this, they may, there you go, can automatically update and it will put their headings in for them. So not required in this report, but for your follow-up report, absolutely this is the right thing to do. But you also need to make sure you reformat these things so that they're the correct thing. Like, you're never allowed to use this font and you're never allowed to use anything but black text. So make sure that you fix these things up for your final report if you put in when you put in a table of contents, because it will be required then. So good start, not required here. Also, I love that this person uses page breaks. Use page breaks. They're a really good way of actually setting stuff out. Okay, now. So this, I think, is supposed to be bold. And hold on, where's the assessment 2 brief? Here we go. It's, yeah. 16-point bold underlined font size for headings. Okay. 14-point, which is wrong. 16-point, I've made it bold and underlined. This is a heading. This is how it is to be formatted. Let's make sure we're following the rules. This is all 14-point font, which is not okay. We want 12-point font for body. So we can come and select this. The other thing we can actually do is modify our style here, which should be 12, and this should be times. And we should be able to grab all of this and make it be that. And it should do that for us, which it has, which is fantastic. Okay. Also, this is not a requirement, but the only way Dylan ever likes looking at things is justified text. I don't know if it's a requirement or not. It will certainly be in your second one. So, okay. So we've done a little bit of formatting stuff. This wasn't the worst. Hey, this person has put spaces between their numbers and their units. Very good. Very, very good. I don't actually think these numbers are required in a big picture overview. I think these types of numbers would be more appropriate in, say, a scoping section, but at least you've formatted your numbers and your units correctly. Cool. So a little bit of formatting stuff was required here. Probably don't need that. I wouldn't use it like that. You're also missing things, and obviously this is way too early in the draft to be stressing about these types of things, but put your page numbers in, those types of things. For people who don't know how to do it, you can just insert your page numbers, bottom of the page, put them on the right, and now you've got page numbers. Super duper easy. Yeah, you can do things like make sure that you get a Roman numeral for the first for the title page and stuff like that. I don't super duper care for this first report, just at least putting page numbers in. To be clear, the student specifically said to me, I haven't done any of this formatting. Can you give me some advice on whether the stuff that's in the big picture overview is appropriate or not? So the reason I wanted to put this on stream is this particular student is an aero. Do you, if you read this as not aero students, understand what's going on? And can we find some sentences here that we could maybe improve? So This project will aim to highlight and find solutions for the problem of uneven resources between developed populations and developing and or areas that experience hardship of geographic isolation and find a solution that can potentially be life-saving. Your first sentence is too long. It's not wrong, but it's certainly a mouthful. And how do we find out that that sentence is a mouthful? We read it out loud. If you sit there and you read this out loud, not in your head, read it out loud, you will be like, this sentence is absolutely too long. Okay, I need to clarify it. The other thing about this sentence is, particularly here, you don't sound like a human when you do this, right? This is how you write instructions, but it's not particularly how you write a section like this. A big picture overview should sound more human than this. This could be very good in a scoping section, but it's not exactly the language you want to use in your big picture overview. In the past century, tremendous advances in the aerospace industry have occurred, improving efficiency, capability, safety, and reducing cost. Yep, agree. Therefore, influencing travel, logistics, exploration, and many other areas that can potentially have a positive impact on individuals' lives. Great. Unfortunately, it was developed societies and areas that benefited most from these advances in the aerospace industry, and this project will aim to develop an unmanned, remotely controlled vehicle to transport critical payloads to hostile, contested, or isolated environments that have life-saving potentials. Okay, this bit in the middle is fantastic. From here to here, I love this. I like the back end of this. I don't love this. Unfortunately, it was developed societies and areas that benefited most from these advancements in the aerospace industry. And this, so if I go here and I hit delete, I think this reads better. In the past centuries, tremendous advancements have been made, blah, blah, blah. Yep. They have influenced travel, logistics, exploration in many areas that can have positive impact on individuals' lives. Yep. This project will aim to develop an unmanned, remotely controlled aerial vehicle to transport critical payloads, hostile or contested. I think this is better. I think you just didn't need that half a sentence in the middle. This, I like. This needs work. But this, I quite like. I think this is very appropriate. I think it's fairly... I don't think there'd be anyone who doesn't understand this chunk of it. I think every project or all first year students would get that. I think that's fine. A client has requested the development of a prototype of an aerial delivery system. Again, read your sentences out loud and then you will acknowledge where they do and do not flow well. That will deliver disaster relief payload across an inhospitable terrain while gathering aerial imaging data. Okay, this is fine. Again, it probably could do with some reworking and massaging the wording to sound a little bit nicer, but that's fine. The prototype will be at a 1 to 5 scale of the full-size system, sure, and it's expected to carry disaster relief payload and a communications and imaging unit to the design target area 20 meters from the launch site. Go away. That 20 meters, the launch site to the target area is 20 meters, belongs in your scope, not here. These components are susceptible to shock and can be damaged on hard impact. Also, the solution... Okay, why? Why do I care? Why are you telling me this? Does this matter? Do you need to talk here about safe landing? Or padding? Also, the solution must be safe to the operator, handler, and the receiver of the payload. Also, the payload must be easily... Okay. The final product must be easily transportable in something this big. This is a scope. This is how big, how many, how much. A bunch of these numbers belong in your scope. These ideas, these concepts around safety is really important. Not just the safety of the receiver, but also the handler, also the operator. Also, the payload has to be able to be extracted safely. This concept, this discussion is really appropriate. Getting caught in the weeds here is less appropriate. Take some of this out, put it in your scope, make this section sound more like you're talking to me. None of this is incorrect, it just doesn't belong in here. And to some extent, you're telling me stuff like this. Also, the launching system consisting of a ramp with rubber bands will be supplied by the client, and an adequate attachment to the launch system will need to be considered. Again, factually true. Big picture, what does it mean? What is the relevance of this? How does it fit into the real world? Do you want to talk here about the fact that you don't have complete control over the whole system and system integration is going to be part of the project? You can talk about that there. You're getting into talking about safety again here. Maybe this belongs up here. Maybe these things should be tied together. I'm not saying the wording flows particularly nicely here, but you're talking a whole bunch of safety stuff here, and now you're talking safety stuff here. So maybe you should put those things together. Okay. So in this section, the client workshop will have the materials and tools needed to complete the prototype. Not true. You have to buy your own materials, but yes, you'll have the tools. And other tools, materials will be needed and approved by the client. It's fine. On test day, 3 attempts will be conducted and the final prototype will be evaluated on a wide range of factors, and a presentation followed by question and answer will be conducted to demonstrate to the client why our solution should be chosen. Factually correct. Probably belongs in here. I think your wording and your positioning maybe needs to be changed though. Try and step away from thinking about this as an assignment at university and start trying to think about this more as this is the real world and we have a real project to deliver. So there's not necessarily anything wrong with addressing how test day will work, but big picture, do we care? Do we care how test day specifically will work? Is that a function of the big picture problem you are solving, or is that a particular constraint of this thing? So I think with a lot of this, you've got a lot of the right bits here, but sometimes you're getting caught in the weeds. You're worrying too much about this being an assignment, and you need to just dump a bunch of that into your scope and step back and go, what problem are we solving? You also haven't spoken. Now, some of this also, by the way, to everybody now, talking to, I mean, I've obviously been talking to all of you the whole time, but talking to everybody here, understanding your big picture problem is going to get much, much easier after you do the design thinking exercise in week 5. If you're a chemical or a renewable, you've already had a crack at that. You did it with Simon this week. A bunch of you are going to do it tomorrow in your Friday class, but most of you will do it in week 5. And once you've done that, it will be much easier for you to write this section. So the takeaway here is you might want to write this section last. Yeah, last. It is entirely reasonable for you to write all the other sections of your report and write this one dead last. Completely reasonable thing to do. So if you're sitting there going, I don't really understand who my client is and what the big picture is and whatever, maybe you need to wait until you've done design thinking and then you'll have a better go at being able to do this. So that is my overall feedback to this section. Going to have a quick look at the chat and we can address some of the things. All headings and subheadings to be left aligned? Yes, I think so. I haven't prescribed it, so I wouldn't mark you down for necessarily centering them, but I think centering them is a very bad idea. I would leave these left aligned and I would justify my text. This, by the way, is called justifying your text. Get out of it, Hugo. Sweet. Just to confirm, our first 3 sections about our problem scope and client is about our major project, not the problem of this task. You are never, ever, ever writing about the task. which is why this is not called an introduction. Okay, never give me an introduction to the assignment. Tell me about the problem. It's always, in ENGG1500, it's always about the project as a whole. Okay, it's never giving me an introduction to the report. It's always about an introduction to the problem as a whole. Yeah. Double spaced. Yeah. So good call. Let's do that. We can do that live. So it's not double spaced, and it should be. So we can come in here and we can go double. Okay, and we realize that we've already got too much information in here. So we're probably going to need to do a little bit of culling, which we already know a bunch of the stuff that we're going to cull out of this, so that's good. So this is probably about an appropriate length, but we might want to look a little bit about what we keep and what we don't keep. I understand what's going on. Chemical propellants could be dumbed down to fuels. Yeah, so that's a good point. In here, we somewhere address chemical propellants, which means fuels. It means you can't use a combustion reaction to make a jet engine to make the thing fly. Was there some more appropriate language that could have been used here? Would have you lost anything by using more human language? In this section, no. In the scoping section, you might want to be a little bit more technically correct, but absolutely in the big picture overview, you could just talk about it being safe, and you could maybe just say nothing that's combustible or no fuels for safety reasons. You don't have to be quoting from the brief as much. You can try and humanize that language. That's a good call. Yeah, there is a few too many linking words. And again, if you read your own stuff out loud to your screen, and yeah, I look like an idiot right now, I'm aware. But when you keep running out of breath, it's telling you, okay, I need to use some more full stops. Yeah, they fully admitted this hadn't been formatted and was not what they were looking for feedback on. But for all of you, I thought it was a helpful thing to do. Yeah, it's certainly not a bad brief. It's one of the reasons I picked it. For Aero, client can be Lockheed Martin, 100%. Hey, Luke, you can drink beers whilst you listen to this. I have no problems with that. Sweet. So let's have a look at our other one. Don't save. Let's go to this one. So I've removed a little bit of information here. This is also incorrectly named, and it needs a little bit more work in here, but that's okay. They've got... So this is, by the way, why I do always do my peer review with my Qs on. These are called Qs. I don't know why they're called Qs, but they are. I always do this because you don't want these two spaces here. They shouldn't have been there. So there we go. This is formatted correctly. I would prefer this to be justified, but left aligned is technically fine. Let's give this a read. This is a mechanical... No, this is another error. Same project. That's convenient. With the ever-increasing scale and severity of natural disasters present across the globe, there have been calls for new developments in the aerospace sector to provide a low-cost, efficient delivery system to be utilized by emergency rescue workers to deliver vital supplies such as water, radio communications, and medical equipment to isolated individuals during natural disaster situations. Good. Really, really great summary. Long sentence, very long sentence that possibly could do with being split. But I think your higher use of your commas kind of made that a little bit easier for me to read. But that's a fantastic summary. Over recent decades, a major increase in the severity, frequency, and cost attributed to natural disasters in Australia has been observed. With the blah 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 drought, this is fantastic. All occurring within 5 years of one another, yet being starkly different from each other in every other way, and each becoming more intense than the previous events of the same nature. The 2022 flood saw state emergency services, SES workers, work tirelessly to provide aid to thousands of people impacted by the disaster, many isolated due to flooding surroundings. very, very good figure. This is good. I like this a lot. Um, what are you doing about it? Would be nice. A little bit more of an explicit and so where's our kind of call to action here? And I mean that may be coming in here. The client for this project is the SES. Require a simple, easy to use transport system to deliver supplies by air to areas where land travel is unfeasible due to inhospitable terrain. You can't drive the truck through there to get help to this person, but could we launch a small aircraft and deliver aid to them? Fantastic. This sentence arguably belongs, or maybe not exactly this sentence, but this concept arguably belongs up here. And you could probably shrink down the amount of space you've taken up by this figure. So you could try and put these two images side by side. Maybe you pick some slightly different images, like one that's a little bit more square here, and put them side by side instead of on top of each other. Also, you don't have to do this. You can just put a comma in here. And yeah, you don't actually even technically need to do what you were doing there. This is I'm so in the weeds here. This what you've done is fantastic. There are efficiencies to be gained in you're wasting some white space on the side here. You should move them side by side, get yourself a little bit of space, move a little bit about how you're going to solve the problem up and into this section. Maybe use a few more full stops, but this is really, really good. Cool. All right, so we're into the scope now. Currently, SES is limited to these things. Yeah. Okay, this is a little bit more talking about the problem. I don't necessarily have a huge issue with this. This is, I guess, a description of the client. This is I'm actually okay with this. This is a very good description of the client. It might be worth splitting this into 2 paragraphs though. This is my description of the client, and now this is my scoping statement. Prototype delivery system made at a 1/5 scale, carrying a payload. Remember, spaces between numbers and units, supplied by Lockheed Martin, scaled down version of payload system. The delivery system chosen must have the ability to be carried, either whole or disassembled in a ute tray, thus the prototype must fit in these. Remember, spaces between your units. Cool. Good. This is excellent. So we've had a bunch of questions around, should my scoping statement be dot points? And they could be. And this could have been dot points, but it reads just fine as a really nicely crafted paragraph. Again, nice use of a figure. Is it needed? Maybe, maybe not. But if they had the space, it's a good use of a figure. Really good. It may be missing a few things like, how many of these are you making? Is it just one, or is this something that you want to make a lot of very cheaply? You may not fully know the answer to that yet, and that's okay. How much will it cost? Isn't in there as well. How long do you have? May be worth it. You're talking here about SES people deploying things in flood environments, and we kind of know this from the previous one that we read, is there's a time frame on how quickly this thing needs to be assembled and launched. So trying to work some more of those numbers into here would be helpful. But this is very good. Should the figures be centered in the pages? Good call. Good question. I would say yes. I would always center my figures. I really dislike left-aligned figures. I really like centered figures. I'm here nor there on left-aligned captions. I actually prefer left-aligned captions versus centered captions, but it fluctuates. So yes, I agree. The figures, I believe, should have been centered. And I don't know. You do you on whether you think that looks better as a centered caption or a left-aligned caption. I think if they're full sentences, then they should be left-aligned, and if they're fragments, then they should be centered, but we're so in the weeds at that stage. The robot has way more to talk about than the scope of most. So you have a similar thing to discuss in the robot project around the fact that it's a scaled down version. So you kind of have almost two scopes to discuss, but you've got way more details in there around the whole track limitation stuff is massive. Talking about the code, the microcontroller, the fact that you're restricted thus because of the microcontroller to PyCharm, you're restricted around the chassis, all of this goes into the scope, but also talking about things like, and this will make a lot more sense after your week 5 exercise, reliability, repeatability, safety, all of these things will need to go in your scope. And they're somewhat nebulous for you now and will help solidify them over week 5. There's actually the robot project has the problem that there's too much to put in the scope, but not all of it is as easy as this, where you get to say this thing weighs this many grams and must be this big. Granted, you don't have as many of those things, but particularly after your week 5 exercise, it will make more sense to you. You won't have a problem with fitting stuff in your scope. Same deal with software. You've got so much to talk about in your software scope. So to help some people understand this a little bit more, yes, some of these things may go in your scope, like these numbers, but some other things that can and should go in your scope. Consider more about who your user is. So in the software project building an app, for example, have you considered how many users you have, who they are, what their skill sets are, how long you have to deploy this thing for, how long it will need to operate for, what the stages of scale up might need to look like. All of these things can go in your scope as well, as can a line that you may or may not be able to put a number to, but you should be able to put some descriptor to around safety, which we've already spoken about for this project, but safety, reliability, and trade-offs with cost or speed or effectiveness or something like that. So all of those things can go in your scope as well. You will need for software to put some numbers to budget and size that you believe are reasonable. So this is one of the things when it comes to scoping that you're going to want to do is put some numbers to this so that you can say, hey, and this is how this works in the real world when you do these, because you do these in the real world and you give them to your client normally at this stage. And if, say, the softwares go, hey, yep, I'm going to build an app that can have a maximum of 100 users in it, or you build a thing and you say it's going to have $100, even though nothing has been prescribed in the scope yet. You just sort of go, yeah, in my head, I'm seeing something that costs less than $100. And I read it as the client, and I'd be like, what? I thought you had $10. Or hold on, no, I've budgeted you $1,000. We're so off the mark here. So a lot of the time your scope isn't about being super duper accurate. It's just about drawing a line in the sand and saying, we will be somewhere within this. Are we even in the same order of magnitude? All of that can go in your scope. Should we include scaled down versions of the track pieces in the scope? Will you have space to fit them? I probably wouldn't. But you could include one if you thought it was helpful. Cool. Some other things, and conscious of the fact that it's almost 7, we're going to do this again next week, by the way. So feel free to please submit more of these for next week, and we can talk through some more of them. But most of the questions I've been getting so far have been people working on the big picture overview and the scope, which is why I've spent so much time on them. But as you get into these other things, just some things that I see quickly as I go through. A collection of modules has been provided to each team to aid. Okay, so this is a big picture overview of here's more or less the stuff I'm about to introduce you to. Really nice. I love this. I don't want to ever see this be like much more than 4 or 5 lines, but a little, here's what's coming. We're going to talk to you about aerodynamics, basically. You then get straight into lift, which, okay. I would have probably started with drag instead of starting with lift, but that's fine. I assume you had a reason to do that. You talk to me about it, you're giving me some equations, this is good. Generally, we don't want to embed our equations inside of a line. So how you would normally format this is like this. And then you would center that equation. And then you would give it an equation number, but for this report, I don't care. So this is better. This is what you should do. This is nice for somebody who's skim reading back through them to be able to be like, oh, there's the lift equation. Here's the drag equation. Here's the potential energy equation, and then there's a kinetic energy equation. And this is a nice way to read longer documents with lots of maths in them. It's not absolutely required. Yeah, it probably is. You should be doing this. So do this. I hate this text. I don't know if you were trying to use this as a title, but there's nothing wrong. If you wanted to now move into the new topic of aerofoils, do it yourself. So crop that down. Get rid of all of that crap. You can crop the sides in as well if you want. I don't know if it's required in this particular case, but you can crop them in. We can center it. But if you wanted to have aerofoils, and then you do you in terms of make them 14 bold underlined, you should do that yourself. This should also have a reference, as should your other ones. I don't know. That one doesn't have a reference, and these don't have a reference. So you got these from somewhere. You should reference them. It looks like you've done some referencing in your text. You should also put this reference inside of your figure caption if you took the figure from somewhere. It belongs in the figure caption. This is one of the really nice things about using IEEE, and one of the a little bit more annoying things about APA is in caption referencing can make them a little bit longer. But, you know, you just need to put basically that, if that's the correct reference for this particular thing, both in the text, if that's where you're talking about it, but also in the caption. Okay? Oh, you need to do some slightly better cropping there. I can see this little bit of crap up the top. Let's crop that down. Let's get rid of that if we can. Hopefully we don't lose, we're going to lose a little bit of that. Okay. You can, if you want to do this better, import this into PowerPoint and just draw a white box on top of that, and then group them together and then resave it as an image, and then you'll get something without this crappy text on top of it. Yep, some more equation stuff, which we've already spoken about. Referencing again. Make your pictures be the same size. They look like they're kind of jumping around a little bit, that this was really big. This is pretty, I think, appropriate. I think that's actually a really nice size figure. That's big, but I think it needs to be big. It deserves to be a full width figure. That probably doesn't need to be bigger than this, so I would make them be the same size. Just look for that extra little bit of consistency. Yep, you've got some things to do still here, and you're putting your references in. Continue doing so. Yeah, and I think you should be fine. This is really good. This is in a fantastic position for being a week and a half out from due. So really, really nice work to whoever this is. Yeah. All right. I'm going to scan through the chat and answer any more questions. I'm going to stay here for a little bit longer and answer as many questions as I possibly can. But yes, I acknowledge that it is 7 o'clock and you are more than welcome to be free. If I can help you, if you've got questions you think I can help you with right now, please ask them. Otherwise, come back next week. We're hopefully going to be able to spend much, much more time doing this next week. All right, that's my goal. So get your reports together and we'll try and do some more of this next week. But if you're done, please be free. For students who are building the robot, what would you say for why are we making this? So you're doing the scaled down version for Caudal AI, right? Make sure you've watched the big picture overview video that's on Canvas. equations are not very conservative for real estate. I would actually argue that they absolutely are. You can do a lot with an equation that you can't do easily in words. Yes, just slapping in every single equation on the face of the earth can take up a lot of space, but a lot of the time you can actually do a lot more with a couple of well-placed equations. Oh, these are called cues. Sorry, I'm reading this question. Is there a reason I have dots instead of spaces? So these things are called cues. They show you your punctuation marks. This is explained in the Word 101. And it just, everywhere you've got a space, it puts a dot. So you can do things like identify double spaces super duper easily when you turn your cues on. Or that somebody's put a enter here when maybe they shouldn't, and that's not the right spacing to have. So these are really helpful for proofreading. Oh, yes. You are correct, sir. You are correct, sir. We'll do a bunch more next week, Carson. I'm glad that you're finding them helpful. It's always a little bit hard to work out exactly how much I should be talking in these things, but yeah, we'll do a bunch more of these next week. I'm hoping to dedicate as much of the stream as humanly possible next week to just doing this and answering questions. Yes, thank you for the two of you who volunteered to be put on stream and be torn into by a Dylan. This is not an easy thing, so thank you. For software, it doesn't have mathematics equations, so what do we put in models? No, you don't have to, but mathematical equations aren't the only types of models. How are you modeling your server? How are you modeling encryption? How are you modeling your users? What do you expect them to be? So a whole bunch of that stuff fits in your models and equations. I was going to say you don't have a real DST person to work with, but you do have a real DST person to work with. But the limitation, the way in which the server is being used to represent how a server would work in reality, you can discuss this as a model. Encryption will be a big one for you. Bunch of those types of things. Yeah, I didn't plan that they were both arrows. They just happened to be the first two that I opened up. I normally try and avoid ever doing two of the same ones. These just happen to be the people who got me stuff early enough for me to review it, and they had stuff for me to talk about. Uh, so if you sent a draft recently but want to send a newer updated one and the first draft hasn't been looked at, how should I go about it? So I'm going to ignore any drafts that have been sent to me so far. So I'm basically, any emails that are sitting in my inbox, I'm just going to ignore. Come Wednesday next week, send me your drafts Wednesday morning, and I will review them Wednesday at some stage and pick the ones, or maybe send them to me at some stage Wednesday. The earlier the better. I'll review them either Wednesday or Thursday and pick the ones I want to go through on stream. Are we meant to make a direct reference to the new team member in the report at any point? No. You shouldn't need to make a direct reference to them. There's not necessarily anything horribly wrong with doing that, but there shouldn't be any need to do that. In the same way that if you come in and sort of look at like the modules that we presented to you over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we never made a direct reference to you. Hey, students, blah, blah, blah. That's just not needed. Just put your document together, and it should, in a way that is approachable for a new person, but don't ever feel you need to talk directly to them. Yes, okay, so good clarification. In the second example for Aero, those figures were from the lecture slides, which is true. You said we couldn't all use the same pictures, but if we take them from the lecture slides and reference them, it's okay. Yeah. So if you take the figures from the drawback. the lecture slides are clearly ours. We know that whenever we see them, that yep, that they're clearly our lecture slides. As long as they are referenced, that's fine. You're not trying to claim that they're your own work at that stage. If a teammate shares a photo with you, that's more problematic because now how am I supposed to know whether this is an attempt to cheat or this is legitimate or not? And the big problem is you can't reference that photo because it's not in the public domain. So it's impossible to reference. You only ever reference things that are available in the public domain. So that's where we get into trouble with sharing teammates' photos. But it's okay for, I imagine a whole bunch of people will get the same image off the internet or whatever, as long as they have referenced it appropriately. That is fine. Good question. Sorry if my answer wasn't clear before. Yeah. Do be a little bit careful, just because you maybe get a lot of. So the comment here is equations are my second language. They're so convenient and quick if you understand them. Yes, your statement is entirely true. They are convenient and quick if you understand them. So um, be careful about how much you put into equations. You don't want to throw in a whole bunch of super duper complicated maths. Not that I think any of you are doing any super duper complicated maths at the moment. Just make sure that you've got them appropriate for your target audience. And yeah, I agree, they can be super helpful. Can we make concept wind turbine models using woodworking tools at our homes for mech if we want? Sure, you can make concepts, but anything that goes in your project must be appropriately budgeted for. What is APA and IEEE referencing? I've never come across them before. Watch the Word 101 video. I think it will help you quite a lot. But in referencing, you have different referencing styles. APA, Chicago are very common ones. IEEE is extremely common in engineering. It's an electrical engineering standard. There's a whole bunch of different styles for referencing. IEEE is nice because it's a numbered style. You don't put the name of the author in. You just give it a number 1 for your first reference, and then reference 2 gets a number 2, and then a number 3, and then your reference list is just in numerical order. I really like numbered referencing styles. So, yeah, but they're just two different referencing systems. Are there any textbooks that I recommend reading? No, not at all. I absolutely would not. Apart from, I referenced the textbook in the week 5 lecture, the writing textbook by Beer. I wouldn't recommend necessarily getting it. It's absolutely not required, but it's not a terrible book. It's the best report writing book I've found, but I would never tell students they have to buy it. Everything I want you to know, I've put in lectures. Should we download Word or can we use the website version? Don't use the website version. Download it. You can in a pinch use the website version, but you can download it for free. Go to the uni's website and download Word for free and get it for free. And then you have it, and it's just heaps easier. Do we get individual feedback? No, not at all. Absolutely not. I cannot review 600 reports. So in the interest of equity, right? What we get is fairness across the board. So there's no way I can review 600 reports. So I won't review any unless I can review them publicly. And that way I can say, yeah, okay. Yes, the person who got their report to me probably just got a little more help than everybody else, but as much as humanly possible, I'm trying to generic out the help so that everybody gets the same amount of help. It's the only way I can practically do any of this. You'll obviously get endless individual report feedback. Well, you won't get endless. You'll get 5 full sets of feedback from your peers, though. For the renewable project, is it assumed the seawater will never be contaminated with things like algae and oil? Do you think that's a good assumption? I think that's a terrible assumption. I would absolutely be worried about that. That's a fantastic thing for you to acknowledge. In the testing, it may or may not be, but in reality, how realistic do you think that is? I would say very, and I would say a design that has acknowledged that and can help do something about that is potentially a really good design. Which referencing is best to learn, APA or IEEE? Which one will we use in the final report? Both are best to learn. That's why both of them are in there. You will almost certainly, at some stage in your career, need to use a name-date referencing system like APA, and you'll almost certainly need to use a numbered referencing system like IEEE. Learn both. Better than that, learn how to use a referencing package properly so that it doesn't matter which one you get asked to use. So I'm marking all the reports, or is the AI doing it? Neither. We're doing... So I'm providing feedback in the streams to everybody. We're doing an amalgamated, moderated peer review system for the marking of the reports. So we're going to pull together the feedback that you give each other, plus we're going to have the tutors review a bunch of the reports. I'll review a bunch of the reports as well. And then we build a system that allows us to calibrate the report marks for everybody from there. It's something I went into in quite a lot of detail in one of the other live streams, and I might go into it in detail again when we're talking about assessment 3, because I think that's the more appropriate time to talk about it. For now, I just want to help people as much as I can. Where can you find the AI? You can find it in Canvas. I would love somebody to test this at some stage and let me know if it works or not. Go into assignments. You should be able to see assessment 2 and 3. And if you make a submission to this portal, you should automatically get feedback from the AI. It should just be in here. So nobody's submitted yet. Once somebody submits, you should automatically get... Oh, it looks like one person has submitted. So, yeah, and they're getting a bunch of feedback already. So you should be able to get it there. In the competency section, can we mention our specific tutorial class, as different area tutorials use different aerofoil sizes? No, and why would that be necessary? I think, no, you can't, but also no, you shouldn't. There should be no reason that specific class was important in terms of the big picture things that we want you to take away from this, right? So... where is it? Learnings from your competency. What did you learn from it? Tell me about what you did, but you don't need to get into the details of, I am in this particular class, so I did this aerofoil. That shouldn't matter at any stage. Yes. Yes, Benjamin returns. You are correct. Cool. All right, I think I am successfully made it to the bottom of chat without dying, so I'm going to call it here for those of you who are left. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I hope that this made some amount of sense and was helpful. We'll come back next week and we'll do a whole bunch more feedback. So if you can get some drafts in a reasonable condition, I will try and review as many on stream as I can. It'll probably be like 4 of them. But yeah. Thank you, everybody. Greatly appreciate you all. Good night.